it's Jonathan, and welcome to the second part of Operation Diomedes 1. Today we'll continue our mini-series on the history of Russian flags by covering the era from the beginning of the 20th century to today. The 20th century has seen plenty of changes in the political structure of Russia, and by extension, the flags used to represent Russia. In fact, in the period from 1914 to 1954 alone, the flag of Russia changed no less than 7 times. In this video, we'll be going over the various changes in flags that have occurred since the dawn of the 20th century. Now, let's begin this video. Revoluzione izmienienia flagu. Revolutionary flag changes. As mentioned in the intro, Russia would go through 7 different flags from 1914 to 1954. Like with many other drastic changes in flags, these changes in Russian flags are linked inextricably with changes in Russia's political structure, as you will see in this video. In 1914, World War I broke out between the Allies, led by France, the United Kingdom, and Russia, and the Central Powers, led by Germany and Austria-Hungary. As a result, in an effort to promote patriotism, the Russian government authorized a modified version of the tricolor for use by private citizens, with a golden canton added featuring the Russian coat of arms. Although the original Russian tricolor was still officially the national flag, this wartime tricolor can be considered the second national flag of Russia at the time. In fact, the imperial government even planned to adopt this flag as the full-time of Russia if the Allies, including the Russian Empire, won the war. However, plans to adopt this flag were scrapped with the fall of the Russian Empire just 3 years later. In March 1917, the February Revolution occurred, resulting in the imperial government being replaced by a new government called the Russian Provisional Government. The creation of the Provisional Government left Russia without a monarch, although the replacement of the monarchy with a republic was not made official until September 14th. Anyways, just after the Provisional Government took power, it abolished the 1914 flag, leaving the original tricolor to be the only official flag of Russia. Just 8 months after the February Revolution ended, the October Revolution occurred on November 7, resulting in Russia receiving its third system of government within 8 months, the one-party communist state. Therefore, the Russian Republic was quickly replaced by a new state called... Actually, it did not have an official name at first, although the new state briefly retained the name Russian Republic in certain contexts, while critics of the Bolsheviks sarcastically dubbed it Sovdepia, after the local organizations known as Soviets of Workers and Deputies that helped establish that new government. Eventually, it began calling itself the Russian Socialist Federative Soviet Republic, RSFSR, in 1918, before switching the Socialist and Soviet parts around in 1936. Either way, after the Bolsheviks seized power in Russia, they proclaimed the new Russian national flag to be a plain red flag. The practice of using red flags as a symbol of far-left politics can be traced back to the Jacobins of the French Revolution, which, as long-time viewers of Sigillum Multarum would remember, used the exact same flag to represent itself. A few months after this plain red flag, on June 17, 1918, the plain red flag was replaced as the flag of the RSFSR by this flag, which added a golden rectangle to the canton, with the Russian abbreviation of the RSFSR written on it. Did you think this story was getting complicated? Well, the story is further complicated by the fact that from 1917 until 1923, Russia was fighting a civil war, pitting the communists, also known as the Reds, against the anti-communists, known as the Whites, as well as independence movements in former parts of the Russian Empire, such as Poland and Finland. Although the Bolsheviks had a singular political ideology, the Whites included various political ideologies, ranging from monarchism to republicanism, that were loosely aligned against the Reds. However, one of the few things the White movement had in common was that they continued to use the Russian tricolor as their symbol on land and the St. Andrew's flag on the sea. In fact, even after their defeat in 1923, Russian anti-communists that fled the country, known as white émigrés, continued to use the tricolor. Meanwhile, as the RSFSR was consolidating its power over Russia, similar puppet governments under its control were set up in other former parts of the Russian Empire, as well as other parts of Europe. In fact, those who watched my video on the flag of Slovakia would know that two such republics were set up in Hungary and Slovakia for very short amounts of time in 1919. However, by 1922, apart from Russia itself, the only governments left calling themselves Soviet republics were the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, the Belarusian Soviet Socialist Republic, and the Transcaucasian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic. By the way, that last one is now Armenia, Azerbaijan, and the Republic of Georgia. On December 30th, 1922, Ukraine, Belarusia, and Transcaucasia were merged with the RSFSR to form an entirely new country called the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, USSR, better known as the Soviet Union. Before I continue with this video, I want you to remember one important thing. Although the terms Russia and the Soviet Union are often used interchangeably when talking about this era in history, they were technically not the same thing. Rather, strictly speaking, Russia was just the most influential part of a country that initially consisted of 3 other republics, but would later grow to 15 total by 1956. Therefore, for the rest of this video, I'll use the term Russian flag to refer to the flag of the RSFSR, and Soviet flag to refer to the flag of the USSR itself. Returning to flags, although the flags of each constituent republic within the USSR did not change yet, the USSR quickly adopted its own rather plain flag, a red field with the Soviet coat of arms on it. However, just months later, in 1923, this flag was replaced as a Soviet flag by a red field with a golden outline on the canton, with a hammer and sickle inside the outline and a red star above it. All of these symbols were meant to represent the communist ideology. Just a year after that, in 1924, the golden outline was removed and the collection of stars was moved slightly to the left. Although it is often thought that the Soviet flag ranked higher than the RSFSR flag, the Soviet flag was only flown on 2 buildings in the whole RSFSR, the building of the Council of People's Commissars and the building of the Central Executive Committee. By contrast, the RSFSR flag was flown more often, including on buildings of local councils and on holidays, schools, hospitals, and government buildings. Anyways, in 1936, the USSR replaced its constitution from 1924 with a new constitution, which did not make it any more democratic, but which might have caused some change. And flags. The flag of the USSR itself was slightly changed to this design, which gave the farming tool more curvature for some reason. However, in 1937, as the constitutions of the republics were changed to match the 1936 Soviet Constitution, a much more drastic change was placed into effect on the RSFSR flag, which replaced the stylized abbreviation with a non-stylized abbreviation. These flags would be used for another 20 years, during which plenty of major events in Soviet history occurred. While this pair of flags was being used, Germany began an invasion of the USSR in 1941, resulting in the USSR entering World War II on the Allied side. Throughout what became known as the Great Patriotic War in the USSR and the Eastern Front of World War II elsewhere, Germany occupied some of the European parts of the USSR and recruited some anti-communist Russians to fight against the USSR, claiming that Russia would be liberated from the Soviet regime under the highly euphemistic name of Russian Liberation Army, though they would have been more dead than free no matter who won the war. These anti-communists used the old Andreevsky flag and the Russian tricolor as their flags, with their emblems even featuring both. However, the USSR was able to hold most of its territory, and in the end, not only did the USSR keep its red flags flying across its territory, but in one iconic photograph, they even raised the red flag over Berlin as well on May 2nd, 1945. As this picture hints, the Allies won the Second World War, resulting in the USSR becoming one of the only two superpowers, with the other being its wartime ally, the United States of America. Then, in probably one of the few events in Russian history most of you studied in your history class, the United States and the Soviet Union then began competing for influence on the world stage in what became known as the Cold War, lasting from 1947 to 1991. During the early years of the Cold War, the USSR and the RSFSR used the same flags they adopted in 1936. However, another change in flags would occur in the late 1940s and early 1950s. On January 20th, 1947, the main legislative body of the Soviet Union, known as the Presidium of the Supreme Soviet, proposed changing the flags of each of the republics to include individual colors for each republic, while evoking the idea of a unified union. Therefore, in January 1954, the flag of the RSFSR was changed so that instead of an abbreviation, the canton would feature the red star and the hammer and sickle, and so that a light blue stripe would run along the hoist. Meanwhile, in 1955, the USSR flag made one more change to the emblem on the canton, producing the flag that would fly for the rest of its existence. That is the history of Russian and Soviet flags during the Soviet era. Now, let's leave the murky past behind by moving on to some more modern designs. Современная era, the modern era. As I've mentioned in the last segment, Russia changed its flag drastically several times throughout the early Soviet era, before not changing it at all for the rest of the USSR's history. However, in the late 1980s and early 1990s, the politics, economy, and culture of Russia and its neighbors would change dramatically, and with it, the flags of Russia, the other post-Soviet countries, and even the flags of many of the nominally independent countries, known as satellite states, within the Soviet sphere of influence. From 1985 to 1991, the government of the USSR made several different reforms, from reintroducing the market economy to the Soviet Union, to loosening its control over its Eastern European satellite states, to allowing candidates from outside the Communist Party to compete in elections. Although the exact cause of the dissolution of the USSR is subject to historical debate, and many different factors are blamed, or rather thanked, for said event, these reforms did play a role. Either way, these reforms also caused the Russian tricolor, which was previously banned as a symbol of the pre-revolutionary monarchy, to finally be allowed to be flown in public. In fact, the democratic movements and opposition parties of the early 1990s quickly adopted the tricolor as their symbol. However, a series of events would quickly raise the tricolor to further prominence. In short, during the 1990 to 1991 period, the governments of each republic within the USSR began to acquire more power that was previously held by the central government. In fact, in March 1991, the constitution of the RSFSR was amended to establish an elected head of state known as the President of Russia. On June 12th the same year, Russia held its first presidential election, resulting in one Boris Yeltsin, the last chairman of the Supreme Soviet of the RSFSR, being elected the first president of Russia. These events by themselves did not change the Russian flag, but they did set the stage for a radical change in flags. From August 19th to August 22nd, 1991, in an event known as the August Putsch, the Soviet military attempted to stop the dissolution of the Soviet Union by overthrowing the Soviet government and reversing its reforms. However, on August 22nd, the reformist Soviet government, with assistance from the governments of some of the USSR's republics, including Russia itself, ironically, despite being intended to preserve the USSR, the 1991 Soviet coup attempt actually sped up the end of the Soviet Union. This fact is made symbolically evident by how, on the same day the August Putsch ended, the Supreme Soviet of the RSFSR issued a resolution adopting a new national flag that looked similar to the old flag of pre-revolutionary Russia, both a 1:2 proportion instead of the pre-revolutionary 2:3 proportion, and a lighter shade of blue. It is said that the blue on the 1991 tricolor was lighter than the modern tricolor because the law adopting the tricolor described the colors on the flag as being a banner of equal horizontal white, azure, scarlet stripes. However, just after the readoption of the Russian tricolor, Yeltsin would wave the newly adopted tricolor after giving an address celebrating the defeat of the August Putsch. To this day, August 22nd is celebrated in Russia as National Flag Day. Although the white, azure, scarlet tricolor was for all intents and purposes the flag of Russia beginning on August 22nd, 1991, the Constitution of Russia initially continued to specify the flag from 1994 as the legal flag of Russia. However, on November 1st, the Constitution of Russia was amended to formally abolish the 1954 flag as the flag of Russia, resulting in the tricolor becoming the undisputed official flag of Russia, and the last flag of the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic. By the way, the same series of amendments that formalized the tricolor's role also, among other things, established trial by jury and enhanced the powers of the federal subjects of the Russian SFSR. Just over a month after these amendments, on December 12, 1991, the government of the Russian SFSR declared Russia an independent country, renaming the newly re-established state to the Russian Federation. By that time, all of the other republics within the USSR had declared their independence, except for Kazakhstan, which would declare its independence on December 16th. After the Russian Federation declared its independence, it continued to use the white, azure, scarlet tricolor. Then, just 14 days after Russia declared its independence from the USSR, on December 26th, the government of the USSR, finally accepting that it had lost control over its territory, recognized the independence of all of the former Soviet republics, formally dissolving the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. In an iconic event in Russian history, the flag of the now dissolved Soviet Union was lowered from the Moscow Kremlin one last time, with the flag of the Russian Federation being raised to replace it. The flag adopted earlier in 1991 as the last flag of the Russian SFSR had just formally become the first flag of the Russian Federation. A few months after the end of the Soviet Union, the successors of the USSR began to divide the former Soviet armed forces among themselves, mostly on the basis of which republic each part of the military was stationed in. On May 7, 1992, the armed forces of the Russian Federation were carved up from the former Soviet military forces within Russia. On the same day, the newly established Russian Navy readopted both the naval jack and the naval ensign of the Imperial Russian Navy, albeit in the lighter colors used at the time. The Russian Constitution of 1978, and by extension, the white, azure, scarlet flag, would be retained by the Russian Federation until October 1993, when a constitutional crisis occurred to cause the previous constitution to be abolished. And by constitutional crisis, I mean that Yeltsin did not have a majority in the Congress of People's Deputies, so he decided to send the military to abolish it entirely. Just 2 months later, on December 12, 1993, a referendum was held, resulting in the newly drafted Constitution of Russia being adopted by 58.3% of voters. This new constitution resulted in various changes, including granting the president more power, replacing the Soviet-era Congress of People's Deputies with a federal assembly, and even mandating the government to protect inalienable human rights. Well, in theory at least. In practice, that part of the Russian constitution has yet to be enforced.
In Russia, you cannot attend a protest or an anti-government rally. Let's see what they say about this one. You can, as freedom of speech is guaranteed by the country's constitution. That's true. Russian constitution does guarantee freedom of speech, but I've also said in the past that the Russian constitution is one of my favorite fictional books of all time. It's one of the greatest works of fiction.
One part of the constitution that was enforced was a modification of the Russian flag. The proportions of the Russian flag were changed, so that instead of being 1:2, it would be 2:3. Meanwhile, although the exact shades of white, blue, and red are not set in law, the blue was most certainly changed from azure to a darker shade of blue in order to match the original tricolor. As with most of the other provisions of the Russian constitution, the newly recolored tricolor came into effect on December 25, 1993, with the inauguration of the First Federal Assembly. As for the Russian naval flags in use at the time, they would be used with their respective colors until December 29, 2000, when the original colors were restored to both, producing the flags that the Russian Navy still uses to this day. Returning to the tricolor, it has become widely accepted as the flag of Russia. In today's Russian politics, for example, the colors of the national flag have been used not only by pro-Putin political organizations, but also by most of the Russian anti-Putin protests. Currently, apart from the independence movements in certain parts of Russia, the only political groups that reject the tricolor are the communists, which of course prefer red flags. In other words, the Russian tricolor is, and will be for many years to come, the national flag of Russia. That is the history of Russian flags. Now, on to the outro. And now you know even more about the history of the flag of Russia. In this video we have gone over the history of Russian and Soviet flags during the 20th century. In conjunction with yesterday's video, we have covered the entire history of Russian national flags. In the next video, releasing tomorrow, we will go over the symbolism of today's tricolor, as well as the influence it has made on the flags of other countries. For now, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like on it. If you enjoyed this entire channel, subscribe to it. And if you want to know our next video will be coming out, click the bell button after you subscribe. And I'll see you tomorrow!